Hey guys, welcome to another special episode of Andertons TV, where today it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you all Mr. Allen Hinds, all the way from every...
I love you both. Sorry, I know.
No, it's great. So you've been on a kind of crazy whirlwind tour of everywhere, of Japan and Rome and LA and then London. And...
It's been kind of piecemeal, just because some things happened. I was scheduled to be in Japan, and then we had a direct flight to South Africa. Then I was to go to Italy, and then I was going home. And then Randy Crawford, who some of your viewers may know, who I've worked with through the years, she's a little sick, a little under the weather, so we canceled South Africa. And the guys in Italy said, well, come early. And because they're Italian, they didn't really quite have all this stuff as organized. And I understand this is the southern Italian thing more than the other parts of Italy. But I got there, and I ended up spending more days than I wanted to. But I mean, not a bad place to be stuck, is it?
It's beautiful.
In Italy. So I went there, and then we got in touch, and then I added this at the end, and which I appreciate you having me here. But I've been running around the world lately.
Well, I am super excited. Like you say, shout out to Servo for hooking me up with Alan, who I was saying before, I knew you from some of the product endorsements that you'd done and some of your teaching background. But you know,
there's a couple good photographs of me out there. Yeah, you're right.
Some good photos.
Yeah, that's right.
But I started, so I'm listening to some of your albums, and I'm just going, this guy is so the kind of guitar player, I suppose, that I would always aspire to be. You know, just very melodic and very much about touch and phrasing and feel and you know, light and shade and all that kind of stuff.
Well, thank you very much.
Well,
I don't know. You know, that's the best compliment I ever get, is that people hear me and they know it's me after a few notes. That to me is like more of a compliment than saying I'm the fastest or I'm the most, you know, the deepest, or I can play over changes better than anybody. But you know, it's I'm old, so I've been around for a long time, so I have weeded out the flotsam and jetsam as much as I can in many aspects of my life. You know, for the last 40 years I've been playing guitar. I actually started playing guitar late. I was you know, as a kid, I grew up in Alabama, so I was exposed to a lot of blues, but at the same time I had older brothers and sisters, and they would bring home records back in, we're talking like the early 60s. So I heard Rolling Stones and Beatles and Steve Winwood. A lot of British influence on me early on, because Led Zeppelin was a huge influence on me. But growing up in the South, so was Duane Allman and the Allman Brothers. The early Allman Brothers stuff, I never, you know, the later offshoots of the Allman Brothers, the Southern bands didn't really kill me that much, but the early Allman Brothers stuff was really progressive stuff. And I was lucky to have a pretty liberal, open-minded family. My mom let me play guitar when I was young. I grew up in a university town, so even though I was in Alabama, we were still listening to stuff like Gentle Giant and, you know, a Soft Machine, and a lot of them were like these British, you know, progressive rock bands. And then I got introduced to Steely Dan, Little Feat, Joni Mitchell. These were like all huge. And when I think back on it now, most of my influence there was more songwriters than it really was about, you know, the guitar playing. I mean, when I was listening to stuff, before I even picked up a guitar, I knew lyrics to Joni Mitchell songs. I knew all the Beatles songs, you know, because music was a big influence even before I thought about playing guitar. I played French horn in high school, and that wasn't very cool to be in the marching band when you're 14 years old. You know, there's no girls to the French horn player and with the marching band, you know, that hat, the little thing on it. So anyway, that's when I switched to guitar. And being down south and being in the, you know, early 70s, what a fertile time in the world. You know, I remember people saying back then, like when it got towards the 80s, they said, oh, there'll be another Beatles. You know, it just happens every 20 or 30 years. Everything goes in cycles. But I don't think so now. You know, I think it was like a really special time to be alive. So I had a lot of professors' kids were my friends. So I got turned on to a lot of, you know, whether it was books or just a lot of culture in general that you wouldn't think a lot of kids down in Alabama did. But we had plenty of everything, plenty of drugs and everything down there. You know, we had lots of mushrooms. We'd down the street and get some mushrooms. And go listen to some King Crimson. You know,
So drugs, kids.
Oh, I'm not advocating it.
No, it's fine. We can
Don't even
talk
talk about
that.
it unless you got some.
No, okay. So, I mean, I'm always fascinated about what it was that the switch that goes on in your head, the album you heard, or the guy or the girl you saw playing, and you just went
something that just set me off. Yeah, I am too. But I think if I were to, you know, it's the funny thing about doing these master classes that I'm lucky enough to do now around the world is that you self-evaluate. You end up like, you know, people ask you, well, how do you do this, or what did you think about this, or where did this come from? You do a lot of soul searching and a lot of. There are a couple landmark things for me when I was a kid. I saw the Allman Brothers. Probably the first time I ever saw a Marshall amp with a Les Paul was right after Duane Allman had died. The Allman Brothers, who lived 40 miles from where I was, they came to Auburn University and they played a concert. I remember standing in front of Dickie Betts' amp and just going, holy moly, man, I've never seen guitars sound like this. I've never heard guitars. Just the impact it had, the sound of the two drummers and their music, even because Dickie Betts was really playing his ass off then. I mean, I don't know if you are that hip to the Allman Brothers, but you know, Duane he used to always, even as a joke, he used to say, "Oh yeah, I'm the popular one, but Dickie's the really good one." And back then, Dickie Betts was really playing some really great stuff. Like even to this day, I use for my consummate, you know, tone of Les Paul humbucker. I say, listen to the solo that he plays live on One Way Out. Right. It's the first solo on that song, and the sound of his Les Paul just screaming through a Marshall with no effects. It's just, you hear all the harmonics and you hear his fingers, and you know, sure, I mean, there's like, maybe technically he might rush some here and there or whatever, but the tone and the heart is like just beautiful. So that was a turning point. That's when I said I want to do that, and so I picked up a guitar and started playing in the high school jazz ensemble. They had one. They just started
with a blues rock kind of vibe, blues rock country kind of vibe. Or?
Of course, that growing up in Alabama, there was a lot of country and blues, of course, and there's the sound of, you know, guitars, you know, with that kind of sound, you know, to have open, you know. The open stringness of what the beauty of what a Telecaster can do. I heard a lot of that early on, not knowing what it was. But then I went and saw, I mean, there are like little things in my life that that kind of turned me around. Little Feat was a great influence on my life early on. Lowell George, not many people know this band, Little Feat, but they had just incredibly great songs, great arrangements, and Lowell George played, he had this heart and this, I wish I could have met this guy because I think he was just a character who I would have liked, who, just a really smart, kind of a genius of a guy who did what he did really well. And after that, I saw George Harrison with in Atlanta, Georgia. We all hopped in my dad's Impala and drove up to Atlanta, Georgia. It must have been 72, I think, or 3, and saw George Harrison with the Dark Horse Tour. And there was a guitar player, and I happened to be lucky wherever my seat was in Atlanta, that was sitting right in front of the guitar player, who I looked in the brochure, and it turns out it was Robin Ford. And I'd never heard guitar played like this before either, because all of a sudden here's a guy playing with like the sweetest tone and playing like kind of jazzy lines on guitar. And I'd never really heard that done before. So from that point on, of course, everything that had his name on it, or Larry Carlton, of course, from my Joni Mitchell stuff, I scooped up every record. And when I finally got lucky enough to meet Robin years later, I mean, I knew every one of his solos. He had played on all the Yellow Jacket stuff. And
how were you learning stuff at this time? Was it all just by ear, or were you getting
just
some
by ear,
structured
which
tuition?
Is
or?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was learning wrong. You know, I mean, and I talk about this in my classes too. When I went through a stage where I really wanted to be Allen Holdsworth, and it wasn't so much for the choice of notes that he played, but it was just his touch. And people kind of forget what a beautiful tone he got on guitar, and what some of his genius was, just the beautiful melodic stuff he could play. It just sounded like he was singing, like a violin player almost. I think he may have played violin early on, I think. But anyway, I remember trying to learn this stuff on records. We didn't have YouTube or any way to slow things down, so I would take my parents' little turntable, a little General Electric that had a 33 switch on it to 16, and I turned the 33 records at 16 and a half, so it wasn't even quite half exactly. You know, I was like learning licks like, it sounded like this kind of. Man, what are those notes, you know? But I was trying best I could, you know, and that's what I tell my students now. I say, you know, if you're going to learn something, you should learn it by ear, not halfway down, like halfway slow, but you should learn it by ear, not go to YouTube first, because you end up using your ear more. And even if you learn it in the wrong place or you learn it incorrectly, it's still the journey where you learn most of your stuff, I think. You know, it's like maybe the difference between reading a book and seeing a movie. You know, you have to use your imagination a little bit more. And your interpretation is going to be way different than somebody else's might be, but that's how you kind of get more of your own style. And I think you get more bang for your buck if you figure out or don't figure out, or you try to just get the same feeling that somebody got. And that's the great thing about guitar, is how emotive and how much expression you can do with 2 notes, you know.
we're going to get round to that because we were talking in the car earlier, and I love the idea that regardless of what level you're at technically, there's something that you can try and learn from this. The way you approach the touch and the feel and the dynamics within your playing. But going back to your sort of timeline, when was it that you thought, I think I want to be a professional guitar player then? Was that fairly early on? Or?
Yeah, I mean, when I got out of high school, I started playing bands immediately. I think one summer I delivered pizzas at the little university. I think that's what I did.
And you're still in Alabama at this point?
Still in Alabama, so this is like 1974. And I got out, and I just happened to have some really good friends. And back then, now, like, everybody has a guitar. Everybody is a guitar player. It's like Frisbees. Everybody has one in their house, the guitars now. But back then, if you play guitar, it was pretty special, And I had one, and I took to it pretty quick, and I had a pretty good ear for harmony, maybe because I played French horn early on. But my to-be brother-in-law, Jack Fitzpatrick, who was a great keyboard player, still is, who lives in Alabama, and he kind of taught me basics about harmony and how to harmonize. And we just started, we put a band together. We had a bass player friend who was a great singer, Rob Alexander, who went on to play with Eric Johnson in one of his first bands. Great singer, great musicians all around. And we just started playing cover stuff. We started getting gigs at the local colleges, because in Alabama there's a lot of colleges. That's Auburn University and Tuscaloosa and Georgia and Florida. Spring break in Florida was just crazy. But we put together a band, and we were playing whatever the popular songs were on the radio. And at that time, it was just great for guitar players. I mean, you could turn on the radio and there was Stairway to Heaven, the complete version, or then there was American Pie, what was his name? The guy. Songs
Don
that were like
McLean.
10 minutes long, or you'd hear a traffic song, or you'd hear, so there was no limit, and everything had guitar solos. So it was a really fertile time. I mean, it was a great time to be a guitar player learning. So we would do like Beatles medley, then we'd do a Steely Dan medley, then we'd do a Styx song, then we'd do Foreigner, then we'd do like, Earth, Wind and Fire medley. We had the variety was just great. And then we would, back then at the time, fusion was creeping into guitar players. World too, so we started throwing in like a Chick Corea song, or a Yellow Jacket song, or a Dixie Dregs song. So it'd be hilarious now to see the song list that we had in the band back then, because it was really a mixture, and people loved it. As long as they could dance every other song to their favorite Jimmy Buffett song or whatever was popular at the time, they were happy, and we got away with murder. And so we started making money, and just right out of high school, I started making enough where I could live by myself and afford rent. I was just lucky. I was just, I had
that is cool.
A big friend network, and back then there were just tons of places to play, and we would hop in a Econoline van with a U-Haul in the back and travel 8 hours to Opelousas, Louisiana, and play in front of some adoring fans, and get drunk afterwards and have fun all through the night, and then go do it someplace else. It was a great lifestyle there for a while, until I got a little more serious, Yeah,
well, so I guess at some point or other, as you say, that you can love almost the extended student life of just earning enough money to eat and pay the rent, but life obviously, as a guitar player, you've obviously gone, no, there's I need to take this to the next level.
That's right.
So where's that?
Yeah, so that was we were starting, my ears were good enough to pick up solos off of Steely Dan records or off of Chick Corea or whatever I was listening to, but I really didn't understand where all the notes were coming from. I mean, I could kind of generally go, that looks like an A minor chord, but I'm not really sure what this other note is in there, and I just kind of used my ear and accepted that for a while. And then Berkeley College of Music was kind of getting popular, because they had people like Pat Metheny were starting to teach up there, and this is, all of a sudden there was a school you could go to where you could actually major in guitar, take guitar courses, and more of a jazz school it was at the time. So I saved up some money and borrowed some money, and I went to Berkeley in 1978. I remember my first day in class, I thought it was pretty cool, because I got into a kind of a high harmony class, and there was like 60 students, and it was 60 students. It was a big class. And this guy walked in, the teacher, who I think is still there, Ed Tomasi. And have you ever seen the movie Whiplash?
Don't think so.
The Whiplash about the drummer who is really mean to his students.
Yes.
It's really popular a few years ago, which is not really how many teachers really teach. But anyway, this guy looked like that. He had eyebrows like this, when he walked on stage, like a military guy, and everybody's very quiet, and I was in the front with my pencil, ready to learn, and he looks at me, he points right at me, he goes, give me all the notes in the C sharp minor 7 flat 5 chord. And I just kind of froze. I went, ugh, C sharp? That's all I could think of, you know. So then he went to this little Japanese girl next to me, and she goes, C sharp EGB. And he went around the room, and he asked everybody key signatures, and what's the four chord of this? And I realized, I don't know anything, you know. So out of embarrassment, I mean, I went back to my dorm room and cried. I went back to my dorm room, and I just was so embarrassed. I sat there, and I just memorized everything. So within 2 weeks, I kind of knew the basic stuff, which is, I've had this debate with other teachers before. I have one friend of mine who teaches up in Holland, and he says, you know, you need to learn like a child. Just throw yourself into the music and immerse yourself. And I kind of think that's great if you're a child, but once you're like, 20 years old and there's other things in your life, there comes a point where you kind of got to do a little discipline and do a little homework, you know. And I think the music theory is not as hard as a lot of people think. For me, it was just like memorizing a lot of things, key signatures, memorizing what the four chord is, how diatonic harmony works. So after a few months at Berkeley, I'd kind of got the diatonic concepts down, which is a big obstacle in learning. I know from being a teacher now for 30 years to a lot of students trying to explain what diatonic means. And even though that already probably to some of your listeners sounds a little too technical, it's like that little bit of knowledge can just really, it explains the Milky Way. It just opens up so many things in the universe to you, about how a Beatles song was written. And not that they were thinking this way, but if you analyze it, that's where it was coming from. It was like basic 5-1 resolution, or this is the 2 chord. Why are those all together? Why are they all the same feeling? So that was a big learning thing for me, Berkeley. Then I went back to Alabama, and we continued on kind of playing top 40, but still more, at the time, we were still getting away with playing Jean-Luc Ponty songs 1 minute and then playing a Beatles song the next.
I find it insane. I mean, whether Berkeley is the kind of college where just no matter what year you go there, you can name drop famous guitar players, but you were talking about some of the guitar players that were on the same course as you, and it's almost like a who's who of just like. So, what are some of your memories of the guys
Berkeley
that used to hang out?
Berkeley, I was kind of hanging out. I just remember a lot of like. I'm from Alabama, so I'd never really hung out with any European guys before. Mm-hmm. So I just remember learning how to roll my own cigarettes and hanging around with a lot of like smelly French guys, And
sorry, France.
No, it's okay. It was years ago. This is the way it was, And I wasn't used to that. That was just a whole cultural thing.
Yeah.
Hanging out with the guys, drinking with them, and it was more than just the playing. But they kind of got me started with like 2/5s, And I remember one time, I was always asking questions. I remember like saying, "Well, what are you thinking of when this chord changes up a minor third?" And he goes, "One guys, maybe he had a cigarette." He goes, "Just go figure it out." He just said that. It was like. It kind of scared me until I said, "Oh yeah, he's right. I just need to go and work it out myself." So I did. I just started practicing scales and practicing the modes, and we had classes where you had to actually write out the different chords for the modes for the third. So I kind of figured out what that was all about. Don't want to get into too much of that now, of course, but it enabled me to at least understand. Jazz and what to solo over. Now I had a little bit more of a clue of what Larry Carlton was playing when he played over the solo on Kid Charlemagne or something like that. Yeah. So it just all started to open up, and the cool thing about being at that time is that there was always a way to apply it. Mm-hmm. The knowledge that I learned at Berkeley, I could immediately apply to whatever was popular, because that was just like, it was the 70s, it was the late 70s, and like stuff for guitar was just really happening then.
But you talked a little bit about some of the bands that you formed with Jeff Buckley and stuff that you did with Scott
that was
Henderson.
Later.
Oh, that's later, is that?
Yeah, we.
I thought this was I
was still in Alabama. I'd gone back to Alabama, and then 5 years later, I won a scholarship. They had these Larry Carlton scholarship through Guitar Player magazine. There was a B.B. King scholarship and a Eddie Van Halen scholarship, and I won this Larry Carlton scholarship. So I got free school. So I went out to school at 85, and in 1985 at MI was a pretty amazing time too. It was a little bitty school. It was on the second floor of a building on Hollywood Boulevard, and I remember walking down the hallways, and you'd be like Scott Henderson, Frank Gambale, Jordi Orio, Robin Ford, Jennifer Batten, Jeff Berlin. Guys, it was like the school was just so full of great players at any given day. And my classmates there, Jeff Buckley was one of my classmates, and not many people know that he was a great guitar player. I mean, he was only 18 at the time. I was already 28. So we were older, but still the better players all kind of gravitated, you know, as you kind of hang out. We were all there were like about 6 of us that considered ourselves the hot guitar players. But we used to always crowd together and try to play. And Jeff, we were always working on on, you know, giant steps and standard songs and like that. So Jeff was a really good, he's had great ears, and he was a real smart kid, you know, and he could play anything. He had really great time. That's what I remember most about, you know, any good player is like, usually I can spot them in a second because I know I can feel where their time is. And that's one common denominator. I think it's one of the most common problems with my students through the years is getting them to play stuff in time, because when it's played in time, it means more, you know. Anyway, but Jeff was before he'd start singing or before he even started writing many songs. I think he had some demo stuff happening then, but we did several performances at MI. We were just, I remember a jam session with me and him and Jeff Berlin, a famous bass player, and this drummer named Rory Flores, who is no longer with us. But we were just jamming at MI, and I remember they had these little rooms where you could just get in and set up and just start jamming. They were like performance rooms. And we were playing, all of a sudden people started coming in because the jam was really good. I mean, Jeff was playing his ass off. I mean, Jeff was really like a Holdsworth clone. Not many people that he had an Ovation, if I remember right, it was like an Ovation Les Paul copy. You know, a white guitar, and he wore it up really high, and he was just totally into all the Allen Holdsworth wide interval chromatic stuff. And we were jamming. I think we were doing Footprints or some easy jazz song, and it started to fill up, and all of a sudden Jeff just stopped playing. I went to him, I said, Jeff, why'd you stop? He goes, I got nervous. Which is strange to me, considering what he became.
Yeah.
You know, he just really blossomed into. He came into his own. You know, after he left school, he realized that he didn't need that information for what he was going to do. And I don't think there's many guitar solos recorded of him playing. It's mostly just his rhythm punch and his vocal and great lyrics. And
what was it that? So apologies, I hadn't realised that you'd gone to sort of guitar school, then gone back to Alabama for 5 years, and then gone to another guitar school. What is it about? Clearly, there's a fascination behind learning here that's obviously gone on to, you know, put you in good stead as a teacher. But what is it that what is it that draws you to this sort of pursuit of knowledge? You know, like wanting to just know more. Is it?
Well, I don't know if I have gone that far. I mean, I think at the time, it was just I wanted to keep up with the Joneses. I wanted to be able to play whatever I was hearing on the record. I heard Larry Carlton. I said, I want to know what he's playing. I want to know what that note is. You know, how come that note works on? What is that note? What is that chord? Well, how come that one note sounds? I wanted to know how jazz worked. I never really wanted to be a jazz player per se. I mean, we all went through a stage where we wore our guitars up really high and we all tried to play Joe Pass stuff, you know. But I never consider myself a jazz player. I never would for a second, because the guys who do that or have dedicated their life to it. The thing that got me and that kept me kind of propelled was the beauty of what guitar initially attracted me to guitar, and that's the fact that a guitar can go like, you know, that kind of stuff is like, I love that kind of stuff because there's no other instrument that can do that kind of. A little out of tune, but it has a lot of feeling. You can bend notes. You can watch Jeff Beck. He's a master of how he just manipulates all the different sounds. You can pick that. There's just so many things you can do. So over the last couple of years, I've kind of gone back to what really makes guitar special to me, and I try to, in my master classes, I've tried to come up with little theories, exercises, state of mind, little exercises you can get to where to where you're going for that more than trying to play melodic minor in all 7 positions. Because from my experience, I know I happen to have a really great band in Los Angeles, and it's like, to me, it's like a really great jam band. In that my music, there are some chord changes that go on during the melodies, and there's some vibes, there's some kind of cool grooves and stuff. But the magic happens in my band, I think, when we just break down the solos, and most of my solos are pretty much one chord. But it's just the band, these guys are so talented, they really just make stuff happen with nothing. And I realized at some point years ago that you can affect just as many people with really simple bluesy stuff as you can by playing a lot of fancy stuff. I mean, when I think back, the stuff that really shook me when I was a kid was hearing Jimmy Page or hearing Freddie King, or the early Freddie King stuff, or B.B. King. A lot of it was blues oriented, but I got kind of bored with blues after a while. I mean, I've never been a dedicated blues guy either because I got tired of just the 1-4-5 progression. So there are certain records like Freddie King's Texas Cannonball, where it's a little bit more song oriented, or B.B. King's Indianola Mississippi Seeds, which has like Joe Walsh on it playing with him, and Carole King, and there's a Leon Russell song in there. So I was still, influenced by all the harmony I heard from all the mostly British musicians like Led Zeppelin, Beatles, but I love the groove and the sultriness and the sexiness and the feeling of blues stuff, which is actually where a lot of the British stuff came from to begin with. So it's kind of all connected in some weird way. Am I making any sense at all, or am I just going around in circles?
No, it's all good. But where did, after you finished at MI, what did you feel? I mean, what is that, like 2 years, 3 years? Or something?
1 year. At the time, it was just a 1 year program.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then had you moved permanently then to LA, and you're sort of thinking, right, this is it now.
And then it was like I was playing with other students. We were playing Filipino bar mitzvahs and weddings and doing these weird whatever it took to make $50 here, $50 there. And I'll tell you one really quick story.
Yeah, do it.
There was my father. They've been sending me money all along to help me live out in Los Angeles, and he finally had this. He said, "Alan, I think we need to have a talk." He goes, "What do you really want to do with your life?" And I was thinking, "Oh God, here it comes." I said, "Well, Dad, I really think I'm a good guitar player. I think I can do something with it eventually." He goes, "Well, look, we can't do this forever. You're 29 years old, almost 30. If you want to come back and get a job or something, we're all proud of you or whatever." So anyway, I hung up the phone all depressed, and then I got a phone call literally the next day from this guitar player who's still one of the top studio guys in Los Angeles, who I'd met through a friend. His name is John Gu, and he's a great guitar player. And he said, and what they used to do, they had an old 80s version of what is now like American Idol. Then it was called Star Search. And what they would do is the studio guys would record all the music in the mornings, and then later in the afternoon they'd do the video shoot with whoever the singer was or whoever the main artist was, and the band would be on stage, but they were all playing to the recorded tracks, right? So he said, "Look, Alan, we've already recorded this track but can you come in this afternoon and just play air guitar? You got to pay $100." I went, $100? So I said, "Sure, man, I'll be there." So I show up and they dress me. They put a tuxedo on me and they give me a little Ibanez, whatever the cheapest guitar from Guitar Center was at the time, and it wasn't even plugged in, And so I'm just going like this, kind of playing to the music, But the next day I got a call from my dad, who had seen me in Alabama on TV, and he goes, "Alan, we are so proud of you." I go, "Dad, I wasn't playing at all. It was, he goes, "It doesn't matter. We saw you on TV. That's all." So.
That's nice.
Well,
that's a cool moment.
It was a nice moment, but perception is everything, and that's not that I did anything with my career, but it enabled me probably to stay out in California for a few months later, longer. And then I started getting some gigs with different bands, not because of that, but just because I stuck it out in Los Angeles a little bit longer. But at the time, there was a lot of smooth jazz was starting to happen. Which is not the most demanding music to play, but there were a lot of bands that were going out of Los Angeles then, so I started auditioning for them, and I got several. So I toured with a guy named Richard Elliott for a while, and Bobby Caldwell, who had a big hit, "What You Won't Do for Love." Was that song popular here?
I know the name, but...
What you won't do for love. That was his big hit. But he sang great. Bobby still does. He's still around. But that was one of my first gigs. And then I got a band called Hiroshima, which was a smooth jazzing with Japanese instruments. And I toured some with Natalie Cole and Roberta Flack, doing like little short tours here and there. And then I got Randy Crawford's gig. Randy Crawford kind of picked us all out of, I think it was Bobby Caldwell's band in 1990. So from 1990 to 2005, I was with her pretty much traveling around the world, playing everywhere. We just played in Cheltenham a few months ago, I think. Am I pronouncing it right?
Cheltenham. At the racecourse.
Cheltenham.
I'm
from Alabama.
Cheltenham. I know. Add that to the many long list of English towns that you don't say how they're spelt. Slough is the best one.
Which one?
Slough, because you would pronounce that as slough if you just read it.
S-L-U-F-F?
Well, yes, but that's not how it's spelled. S-L-O-U-G-H. But most people just say is that slough? That's not slough, but it should be. Be a great name for a town.
All right.
Anyway,
but that was so that that's what happened. And then I just, Gino, other gigs came later. Gino Vanelli, different people, would hire me, and as time went on, I mean, I started to realize that I hated most of everybody else's music, and I wanted to do my own. Basically, I kind of had a bad attitude, I think, for some of those bands, especially the smooth jazz guys, because a lot of them were. I mean, I think they took themselves a little too seriously, and I would be in the band going, "God, this music really sucks, doesn't it, guys?" And then the leader would be going, "No, it's my music," Realize it was politically maybe the wrong thing to say. Well, anyway, but I was ready to move on anyway. I think a lot of music I wasn't really enjoying. I was trying to make the most out of it. I don't want to mention any names.
But this is where
I could.
Because I was surprised when I started going through your back catalogue that your first sort of
I've been
solo
fired
stuff,
by everybody.
No, I haven't. I just read nice things about you.
I've been fired from the best.
But your solo career is really a relatively recent thing. I mean, 2005 was the first.
I waited. That's another message I tell the students. I waited way too long.
Right.
To do that, because you learn so much about yourself and about it's not only about writing music. I mean, you just learn a lot about life and yourself when you have to make your own CD. I mean, you putting a song together is one thing, making sense with a bridge and the different sections and soloing and playing and then hiring the right guys who you're going to get along with, who are going to interpret it the way you hear it. There's all that, and then trying to play your stuff on top of it, and then making sure they're all kind of make sense to each other, and then you're mixing it, finding the right way to mix it, and learning that up in the studio, and then mastering it, and then getting the artwork done, and then having the nerve or the balls to actually hand it to somebody and say, "Here's what I do," and like it. It's a big thing. And every step of the way, it's like a really big learning process, and I loved it. I mean, it was. I got really lucky. My first record, the first person I ever gave it to was Hiram Bullock. Remember Hiram Bullock, the guitar player?
I regularly say that his version of Little Wing on the Sting, the second Sting album, is...
Or the early Steps Ahead stuff when he played like Beirut.
You see, because when I've struggled to find... Hiram Bullock died probably even... I don't think it was long after that Sting album came out.
No, probably not.
Is it on Nothing Like the Sun? I think it's on Nothing Like the Sun. There's a cover of Little Wing. It's like the last track, and it's just.
No, Hiram was really cool. I remember seeing him with. There was a David Sanborn. He used to have a TV show called Night Music. That was a great where they combine. I mean, the house band was like Marcus Miller and Don Grolnick maybe on keyboards, and Omar Hakim and Hiram Bullock, and I had seen Hiram's name on so many like fusion records from David Sanborn. He was always one of those kind of guys.
Is that because I couldn't find a lot of when I tried to sort of just look for Hiram Bullock stuff generally, I didn't find a lot. So it's David Sanborn, which his main gig, was it?
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff he did. I think he did some stuff with Klaus Ogerman, but he was like one of those kind of guitar players who. He had a great blues feel, but he could also play over chord changes when he wanted to, and he just knew when to do it right. And he played with such authority. He was a great guy. Anyway, I had met him traveling with Randy Crawford, like we had done so many jazz festivals around the world. We would see each other backstage, and we were never really close. We weren't having lunch together or anything, but but we used to always talk and hang during the festival. So he knew who I was. And the first year after I finished my first CD, I remember just seeing him at the NAMM show, and I had like 10 of them in my bag. I was getting ready to give them out to everybody, and he was the first person I just gave it to him. And he, there was that week of fear where I was going, he hated it. He didn't listen to it. He probably just threw it out. It sucks. I'll never make another. And then he wrote me this big long email with all these like beautiful things he said about each song. He said, "How did you layer this?" And he went into detail about each. He really listened to the whole CD, and it was really. After that, he was. I had them. I mean, of course, I love him that much more. Like Donald Trump, give me compliments. You're great with me. No, you know what I mean. I didn't mean to go there, but I mean, no. He was just a nice guy, and that was. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to be so nice to me, And
that's a sweet story.
It was a sweet story. So we kind of do. I do a song in my set, often called Cactus. He did a version of the song that was originally recorded by David Sanborn and Joe Beck, not Jeff Beck, but Joe Beck back in the 70s. And Hiram redid it. It's an old Don Grolnick song.
Yes.
Remember it? It's a great song. Anyway, it was Hiram at his best, I think, and he just plays great. So, tell all my students, it's like you've got to do your own music, and that's how you kind of, find yourself, and it's learning. It's not just playing and getting out there. It's about writing and knowing people and getting your comfort group of people you work well with. All that stuff's like so important.
What has put you off, do you think? I listened to, you've had 5 solo albums?
5. I have another band called Wonderland Park. That's
okay.
a trio that I did with a friend of mine. I have a friend who is a part-time bass player. We went to Berkeley and MIT together. Great bass player, but he made millions of dollars doing you ever heard of a cartoon called Pinky and the Brain?
Yes.
That's his creation. That's he went on to be like a stand-up comedian. Then he wrote Animaniacs and Tiny Toon, Darkwing Duck, a lot of things for Disney. And then he did his latest thing. Now he does Captain Underpants.
Yes.
That's
I've got 2 daughters.
Oh, so they know all this stuff.
5-year-old and 11-month-old.
His name is Peter Hastings, and he's he's the executive producer of all these shows. So you go to his house, he has like 8 Grammys, or not Grammys, 8 Emmys, on display in his beautiful house.
Captain Underpants, just genius.
So we had this idea because he always thought that what I he always thought that what I did had never really been documented or whatever. And probably what I do best is when I just when I create a solo out of nothing, which brings me back to like what I love about guitar is that, you can do so much with like just one progression. You don't need friggin' giant steps, and, just getting through the changes of giant steps, they'll give you awards for that anyway, But I mean, just trying to like create something from nothing is, I think, even more and kind of a special challenge, and it can appeal to more people.
What do you need to? What sort of zone do you want to try and get yourself in, or sort of mental state do you want to get yourself in before you're into sort of songwriting mode, or this idea of, if you're taking a phrase that you like, but you're conscious that you want to very much accentuate that sort of light and shade within there.
I don't know. There's a real thing. I mean, it helps to have a lot of enough theory and enough chordal knowledge to know how to give yourself options. I mean, if I had an idea, something as simple as that, you'd go for all the diatonic things first. Might go, but if I have an option of different chords, or whatever, I can just start adding stuff with that note on the top of it. There's one book by probably one of the better guitar players that ever lived, a guy named Ted Green. Do you ever know who Ted Green was?
No, I don't know that.
Ooh, you should Google Ted Green. He passed away several years ago too. He was another guy who was just incredible. Big telly lover. Or Google YouTube Ted Green and Christmas songs.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. He could do any song in any key, reharmonize it with he's those harmonics that some guys do so well. I can't do it. I used to be able to do it. But he'd do like the whole flurries of chords, sounds like a harp player, He was amazing. But he has one book called Chord Chemistry that the book is great, teaching you theory and jazz principles of improvising over 2/5s, which is a big thing. We can, if you want to go any more into theory, the 5/1 resolution was a big thing for me to help me get gigs. But anyway, in the middle of this book, he has like 20 pages of just like really cool chords. And just when I'd get bored, I'd just pick it up and go, oh, what is this chord? Oh, that's cool. Or what is this? And I just find new chords I never thought about. Chords and voicings you never quite heard before, in standard tuning, but they sound like you're doing like open tuning stuff. And he was a master of that, and he could do any song in any key. So when I'm writing, I mean, it's nice to have a groove and a melody. I wake up in the middle of the night. I have probably 1,000 ideas on my phone right now from just waking up, where I kind of have an idea and I kind of pound the groove in my pillow on the phone, and then I kind of sing, or it might be just a rhythmic idea, But how does it take shape? How does it go? I don't know. It's a combination of just hearing melodies and having options.
You mentioned being quite a fan of stripping the guitar back to its sort of bare essentials, and I guess when we say the guitar, we're probably talking the amp as well, right? Or I suppose if it's an acoustic, maybe not. But give me an idea. You know, how does that? Because there are some guitar players that just, you know, it's lots of gain and a big wet kind of delay on it or something like that.
And they still play great. There's great players.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, incredible players.
It's just a different approach, isn't it? Well, the gear thing, I'll tell you another story, because I have a lot of stories. I've been around a long time. But Scott Henderson and I have been friends since I was a student. And I used to go to his house, and we were so anal, especially him. And pretty much Scott is doing his own, he's going at his own frequency, and he's kind of like, and you're kind of like just kind of chiming in, you know, every now and then, because Scott kind of has, but I'd go over there like every 3 days a week, 4 days a week, and we'd be talking about Celestion 35 watt as opposed to 25 watt, or George L cable as opposed to Megami, and 4 feet length as opposed to 6 feet length cord. I mean, it was like, it's so anal to try searching for the right tone. That's what everybody's trying to find the right tone. And then at the same time, Joni Mitchell had this record called Turbulent Indigo, and a song that I think David Crosby wrote called How Do You Stop? I remember listening to that guitar part going, that is the most beautiful guitar tone on this. Who is this? And it's stuff like, you know, the guy was going with a wang bar, you know, and shaking stuff, and it was just beautiful, like harmonics and the tone. And I got the guy's name. His name was Stuart Smith. And I remember a few months later seeing in Guitar Player magazine, he was had a feature article in there, and I said, all right, I can't wait to figure out what kind of rack he has, you know, what kind of digital delay he's using, or what kind of cable he's using, you know. And I don't know, I've never met this guy before, but he's from Nashville, I think, and so I just assumed he had a Southern accent. But in the article, he says, yeah, I have 2 amps pretty much. I have a Fender Vibrolux and one twin reverb from like mid-60s. And he had like 2 Stratocasters. He had, I think he mentioned 2 pedals. Right. He had like a Boss compressor maybe, or a Boss blues driver. I think it were the only 2 pedals he used. And that's when I said to myself, a little light went off, alarm went off in my head saying, you know, it's in your hands and it's in the guitars. Mm-hmm. So I just sold my rack stuff and started, that's when I first went to a pedalboard, back when not many people were still using rack stuff. And I just started using a few pedals out in front and realized that the tone is, you know, it's in your fingers and a good instrument. Number one. I mean, yeah, effects help. You know, I have some pedals I'm really fond of that I can't get away from. But for the most part, somewhere along the line, I don't know if it was trying to play like Allen Holdsworth or trying to play country stuff, but there's something how I learned how to use my left hand a lot. Let me kind of explain. I remember like trying to learn Allen Holdsworth licks, and he would, I think maybe because he was a violinist one time, and I think even back Scott, before Scott used the wang bar so much, he would generate vibrato by going, or tremolo by going sideways. Yeah. You know, I remember at the time I had a guitar that didn't have a wang bar on it, and that's how I used to try to do it, but it takes a lot of strength. So in doing so, I mean, I think...
How are you even doing that? I mean, it's like...
Yeah, you're just kind of like, you're in this tug of war, just kind of pulling the string across the fret.
So you're literally pulling the string backwards almost.
Yeah, you could... I guess I could have done that with the neck. Yeah. By the time you... Like that sideways. So you get you get a vibrato that goes underneath the fundamental pitch and above it. Yeah. So I think that was a real big strength builder for me. Plus trying to sound like Allen Holdsworth. I mean, I hate to say that, but I was trying to emulate him. I could never really figure out harmonically what he's doing. I'm not sure anybody ever will. But I was trying to, the best way that I could tell to get the kind of his sound was when I would descend, I would pull off. When I would ascend, I would hammer on. Simple as that. So, you know, as far as the whole legato things go, because I've been penned with the legato, you know, moniker for a few years, and I never really set off to do that or anything. I just kind of figured out a way to get past my shortcomings. And my shortcomings were that I couldn't really double pick very well. So I figured out how to do the same scales, but instead of picking every one of them, I would learn how to go. Now, a lot of times I'm not even picking, I'm just kind of going. Which is also maybe a good exercise for people who are just trying to get into like playing legato, which I think gives you a lot more dynamics. The window of being able to just softly go to something, you know, picking with your fingers really hard is like that, as opposed to this if you're picking everything. I think it's a valuable technique for that reason, but you could actually choose a scale In this case, let's say like A7, Mixolydian, or whatever scale you want to do. But just, you know, practice it, maybe not picking at all. And some of the notes will not come up because you're hammering on it. And trying to keep, you know, in time, because that's the hard part. Because too many guys, when they do legato, so they go, and it sounds really stupid, you know, for lack of better words. But, you know, the thing is to keep it like steady, get a groove going that's nice and steady, you know, and go, It's even hard for me to do now without being warmed up. Anyway, you get the idea. That's the idea, to try to maybe build up that strength, and it's as simple as that. A lot of the exercises I give in my master classes are like how to simply get more creative and learn the fretboard without having to learn a million new scales, you know. So that's kind of the idea behind legato anyway. And then you put a little bit of distortion on it, and it really becomes very lyrical, I think. If that makes sense.
Beautiful. Your picking is, you know,
it's unorthodox,
not conventional, is it?
No.
Is
well,
that
that's
just
another thing that I think I was the worst student.
Did someone
for
at
Dan
MI
Gilbert.
not sort of beat this out of you? They just let you...
At Berkeley, they tried to change my picking to make it like the traditional Mel Bay book, but Mel Bay picking technique, so you could do the hybrid stuff. But I've always held it with 3 fingers and hold it sideways. So I kind of, every note I play kind of has a little like a little thing to it. So it's a softer approach. I haven't broken a string in 40 years, you know, because my right hand is really light, and I just kind of brush it just enough to generate
I thought that was
the
because
energy.
you had a special set of Allen Hinds guitar strings. That was the secret.
Yeah, that never break. That's right. But yeah, that's the idea. I mean, I was trying to sound like Alan Holdsworth, and even though I never harmonically figured out, you know, completely what he was doing, I don't think anybody ever will. I just love that sound of the way legato sounded. You know, and then back then I used to do vibrato. Like that kind of sound was more just the way I did. So I think a combination of all that stuff made my left hand really strong and made me depend less and less on my left hand, which was terrible for my classes of single string technique, because I could never do, you know, or whatever the Chick Corea song was, you know, but I could go.
It's quite deceptive. I'm trying to sort of literally make my eyes go a bit wonky and like watch both hands simultaneously, but it's...
Well, I'm not warmed up. I'm not really playing well yet, but because it takes a little bit of little extra time in the morning. But that's it. And you know, I was in Japan. They had like 5 cameras on me trying to figure out where I was picking and where I hide my pick, because I pick a lot with my fingers. I just took away the pick. I've always been a fan of the way the guitar sounds. Just so you can get with this stuff, you know.
I mean, that's what you've got here probably the most stripped back electric guitar possible. You know, an old Esquire. This, by the way, ladies and gents, is the real deal. So we'll be mugging Alan for this before he leaves.
That's right.
But so it's very stripped back, but presumably that.
And that's actually another reason why I have a hard time doing legato on this guitar, because the radius is old, and it's kind of. That's another. I'm just giving myself another excuse for the way I play. I just get through playing. Okay, thanks.
But so where are you? You know, you're sort of approaching stuff and going, okay, I've got to get every last drop that this guitar can give me, because I haven't got a big range of different pickup tones. I haven't got a big, I haven't got any sort of active EQ or anything like that. What is your, is it just? I notice when you're switching to your fingers versus the pick. I mean, is it?
It's a lot of things. Even even when I have a guitar that has 2 pickups on it, if I'm in a store trying out a guitar, if somebody gives me something to try out, I almost always switch it to the treble pickup. And if I can get a pleasing tone on the bridge pickup, then I'm kind of in the ballpark. Like, there's nothing wrong with that tone at all. It's not too bright or... So if I can get a nice tone out of that kind of stuff, it sounds really beautiful. And all that is a little reverb and delay. Look, there's something about the old wood and something about the Telecaster design that's really special. That has like every frequency you want in guitar. You know, if you have the right amplifier. I could never afford this guitar by itself. I pieced it together.
Right.
I bought the neck from a guy in Nashville for like $4,000 because I just really wanted it and I had some money, so I bought it. And I had this guitar like over the last 6 or 7 years on probably 4 or 5 different bodies, and they all sounded great. All sounded great. So I'm convinced that probably 50 or 60% of the tone in a guitar is the neck. I really believe that's true, and it doesn't have to be the biggest neck. I learned that too. It doesn't have to be a baseball bat. Actually, sometimes I think it may even take away. But if you have a good sounding neck, that's like a lot of your thing right there. Because this neck sounds good on anything. And then I just got lucky the next few years and found an original pickup set from '52, an original body that was dated with who was the guy, Tadeo Gomez, who would date the necks. You know, so it's all the real deal, except for maybe the tone pots.
Do you use tone and volume much, or are you just doing all the dynamics from how hard you?
No,
you
I have almost everything up to 10.
Okay.
I may roll it back a little bit for if I have to in a solo if I'm playing, but usually I just control it from the volume pedal on the thing.
Right.
I set it like I want. You know, my music too. If you come see our band live, I'm kind of more like a saxophone player, and I kind of have that one tone I use pretty much through the whole night. I don't really swap up and have a big array of chorus or Strati sounding things or telecore. It's
I
kind of the one
on,
tone
on your albums, although stylistically they change a little.
But the tone is kind of the same.
The tone's very consistent, isn't it? Through I notice a lot as well. You do a lot of stuff where you play electric guitar over acoustic guitar, kind of.
I layer a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
that's
really
got to be
beautiful.
From. Thank you. That's got to be from my. I would think from my Led Zeppelin.
Right.
I think I can't play keyboards. I've never been able to play keyboards, so in lieu of that, I'd get like a slide. If I wanted to hear, I might do. You'll hear stuff like that in the background, or I'll use an EBow and wah wah together with slide guitar that kind of, and you layer it a couple times, and you can get some really nice ambient choral, soundscapes.
I think this is. I mean, I'm fascinated as well. Fascinated that again you leave the volume on 10 all the time. I kind of thought with a single pickup guitar, I thought you'd be like, oh yeah, it's here.
I think
and
if you
here
watch
and
Jeff
here,
Beck, man, he's always judging and stuff. But I think a lot of it is like where you pick on the fretboard, where what you. So a lot of it is just how you caress the strings on the guitar.
Caress. That's the word of the day, ladies and gents. Caress your guitar strings.
But voices are really important, and it's like when you pick with your fingers, you can do like a harp player. When you can be more selective. You don't need necessarily to know everything about drop 3 or all these voicings that are kind of more difficult or more involved. But you can take the chords you do know and just kind of be selective with which ones, and just kind of pluck which ones you. So, and all I'm doing there is like finding notes that are in the scale close and being selective with which notes I pick. And it's, it sounds a lot prettier than it probably should.
It's so pretty. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Well, that's that beauty of what makes guitar great. There's a lot of great guitar players in the world who play friggin' great, greater. over changes better than I'll ever play, but to me they sound like really frustrated saxophone players in a guitar player's body. You know, I like the guys who pick up a guitar like this and kind of see what it can do through a Fender Deluxe.
Yeah.
Because that's the beauty of guitar. I mean, the guitar is the only instrument where you can do. You can do that on piano or oboe or French horn or anything, you know. So
you have to be pretty good on the French horn to do that. Right?
That's right. Just think if I could. Anyway, so that's. I've kind of come back to this like real basic setup, and
I'd love to hear you just strum a bit on an acoustic, because again, I love that.
Well, I don't know. I don't really play acoustic that much. I mean, they're on my records. That's just because I use them for texture.
Yeah, I'll hold this if you want. No. I just think it's. I just wondered if you sort of approach it differently,
same way,
or.
These strings are kind of high for me. I don't know. I'd have to work with it.
So you don't write on an acoustic then? You write predominantly on an
I write on acoustic actually, but my
do?
action, I have like an old Martin 0028 from the 60s.
Set up like an electric,
set up really low,
Yeah.
So it's pretty much I might as well be playing acoustic. And I write too many songs in the key of D because I like drop D tuning.
Do you use a lot of other open tunings, or just like?
Yeah, I always keep a guitar around that has some kind of weird tuning that I don't know what it is, just so I pick it up, and it just makes me kind of like not think from the analytical part of my brain. You know, it's kind of fun just to like you're just picking up some weird instrument for the first time ever, and I like doing that just to keep my ears kind of fresh harmonically. But no, I'm not an acoustic guitar player. I just saw Tommy Emmanuel last week, and he's your.
But you were talking about, who was the dude that you were saying you love that kind of Celtic vibe? John Lefferman, or?
He's a guy named John Leventhal.
Leventhal.
We correspond every now and then on Instagram, but if you go to Instagram, he's on there someplace. I think it's just John Leventhal. But he was a producer who got famous producing Sean Colvin, who was an artist who won a few Grammys about 20 years ago. But the record is still my favorite record of all time. There's a couple guitar solos, but it's mostly about the way he layers and just approaches guitar. And he's one of those kind of guys who can play the most simple stuff, and just, if anybody out there has ever done studio work, you know how hard sometimes the most simple stuff can be, because your time's got to be right, your execution has to be correct, and everything has to fall in place. And he's just a master of that, and he's really his hands, he might be playing an old Epiphone Sorrento or an old Telecaster or whatever, but he always uses like open tunings and down to E flat and maybe down to C sharp, and he's just wonderful, a king of just doing like. See, like, I can't even do it that well. I'd have to, have the right amount of tequila to really get zoned
Tequila!
In here. Bartender. But no, he's wonderful. And there's a guy named Blake Mills. Have you ever heard of Blake Mills? Who's a new guy out now who's just wonderful, that kind of stuff, It's what you grow up doing and what you gravitate towards and what you fall into. And to me, listening to him play is what guitar does. Differently than any other instrument does. And he just, he brings out the qualities of this instrument so well, that's why I love listening to John Leventhal. And he's not really a solo artist at all, but he's married to Roseanne Cash now, so you can hear him on all her stuff. And the production, he did a Mark Cohn record, and I think he worked with Bruce Hornsby some on a record, and so he gets around. But he's one of those kind of guys who I think are really steeped and knowledgeable of the Appalachian Americana heartland type of stuff, if you would. But I've never been that much of a not really.
Well, it sounds good to me. We should talk about gear and then talk about
Okay.
Where people can find out more about you. So, your top 3 guitars for where you are right now. No, actually, your top 3 guitars ever, either. You can either do
whether
your top
I own
three
them now or not.
Yeah, you can either do the 3 best guitars you've ever had, or your 3 guitars that you'd have now, or both. Answer both those questions.
Yeah, well, this is probably ranks up on the top just because it's.
Well, that's good that you've still got it.
I won't sell this one.
Good, well done.
Unless you offer how much you're offering. I had a 1964 335. That was an awesome guitar. In '64, that was the same year. Well, I guess Eric Clapton did the Cream stuff, you know, and that's when Gibson started making the necks really thick again. This was a stop tailpiece Sunburst guitar that I traded for a '56 Stratocaster, which was a nice guitar too. But the 335 I really miss. I had a '64 SG. That was like the George Harrison year. That was also for the same reason, because the necks they started making really substantial. Before they changed in '65, they started making Gibsons with the T-top pickups, and they changed the neck angles on them. The necks started getting thinner. So '64 was still like the last year of the really great Gibson stuff, I think. So those 2 guitars, that SG and the 335 and this guitar, I have a Les Paul now at home. That's my best Les Paul I've ever owned. It's a '54 Les Paul that has humbuckers in it. So there's no...
that was like a retro job, is it? Someone's rerouted it for humbuckers.
Yeah, they messed it all up
at some point,
but
it's still
the main thing about it is it's all mahogany. There's no maple on top of the guitar, and it's got humbuckers, which I probably would have preferred over the P90s, and it's got the 17 degree headstock angle as opposed to the 14 degree. You know, they changed that also later in Les Pauls.
I don't know. I knew. I thought it was. Is it Epiphone or something?
Like, see, this is 17 degrees, and like the 14 degrees is like a little bit less.
I thought all the Gibson stuff was still 17 degrees. But
no, not in '65. They changed. So a lot of the guitars, all the Gibson guitars, and I don't know if all of them, but I know the 335s and Les Pauls. The later when they started making them again in the late '60s, they had the lesser angle. So this is one of the early ones that has a nice angle on it, and it just sounds great. Awesome. All mahogany, the ebony fretboard.
So so of the guitars you own now, you've got this old Les Paul, you've got your Esquire, and what's the
I've got a couple
one?
SGs from the mid '80s that I like a lot. They have like a Brazilian rosewood on them. They're early, and I have a Martin
so no
65. I have a couple parts casters. I have a Strat that has a lot of 1956 parts on it. The pickups are from 1956, and the bridge. And the electronics are all from '56, and it's a pretty nice guitar. But the neck itself is some guys in Sweden gave me this beautiful, what do you call it? What is crosscut? Not crosscut.
Quartersawn.
Quartersawn, yeah, neck, and it's a beautiful maple neck, and the body is like a relict Sunburst, and that guitar sounds great. But I've got like 3 Strats, and the exotic stuff. The company called Exotic makes really nice stuff. I think their new guitars. They have a standard one that they give to the public, but on mine they demagnetize the middle pickup because I never use the middle pickup at all. And after I had played this Esquire for a few years, I was kind of under the belief that the least amount of magnetic pull you get from the pickups, maybe has a little more zing, if only a little bit more, but it's still there. And so they demagnetize the middle pickup for me on that guitar, and then they shape the back of the neck for me special.
Yeah.
And right now they're trying to make a replica of this guitar. They're trying to do an Allen Hinds Esquire guitar, which I'm sure
such a great looking guitar.
Probably 2 people will buy. No, you never know. But the idea is because this is such a great guitar, such a great instrument, they're going to try to recreate it best they can.
I don't know what I don't know what it is about really, really great guitar players being drawn to very, very simple instruments, but I don't know. I guess it's because it's all here in the hands, and it just doesn't need to have.
But then you have Alan Holzer too, who was incredible, and he was really into the high tech, even synth guitar stuff, and always experimenting with. I played a couple of his guitars one time. They were like, the necks were exactly the same here as they were up here, real thick, and the action was just incredible, lightweight. If you wanted to play that style, that was the best guitar you can probably get. So, but you're right. A lot of guys have gone back to. When I think about Mike Landau or Robin Ford, a lot of the guys they kind of got guitars right, I guess, back in the 50s and 60s, and they...
Maybe. So, there were your guitars. And then pedal and amps wise, I mean, you've still got a few pedals on the floor here, although you said this is your fly kind of pedals rather than your big
I have a pedal board.
LA board.
I always kind of gravitate for, when I use pedal distortion, I still like the exotic stuff. I've been using the AC boost for a long time. I think the cool thing about the AC comp or the AC boost is that it kind of masks. And I just try to explain it that way because some pedals, there are other pedals that people give me pedals all the time to try out, and a lot of them sound good on one day through one amp for a certain style of music. Maybe for the front pickup of your Strat when you're trying to get that nice Stevie Ray Vaughan type tone, might sound great. But for what I use for the bridge pickup, when I travel around the world, no matter if I'm playing through like I said before, a JC 120 that has like one blown speaker in it, the AC comp always seems to kind of mask it and make it sound really. It's very pleasing. It has all the harmonics without being compressed, without being too overly saturated. And I almost always keep like a clean boost after it.
Okay. Always on.
Always on. That seems to, I don't know, there's probably a technical reason why it works, but it seems to help hit the front end of your amplifier a little bit better, make the fingers feel a little bit more responsive on the fretboard when I have that. And I only have it set up like this because the distortion should be before the volume pedal, of course, to get the same degree of distortion anywhere you are volume-wise. And then I'm doing the wet-dry thing too, which always seems to sound really great.
We need to talk about it. Can we just, there's one other.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Have you used the chorus at all since?
I think I turned it on one time.
Did you?
When I was doing a. Yeah, and this is just it's just one that I found that it has, I was looking for a tri-stereo chorus. You remember what tri-stereo choruses were back in the 90s? I was looking for that kind of sound on a pedal, and that's what this is. And this actually is really great stereo. When I was playing with Randy Crawford a few months ago, we did some stuff in Germany, and she kind of needed that wide open stereo thing. So this pedal does that really great.
The new Neighbor stuff is great, really good.
Yeah, I think so too. I have another pedal at home that's I can't remember what it's called now.
Another chorus pedal, or?
That's more analog sounding, a little bit darker sounding. I use for like the real fast rotary sound. But this is beautiful for this kind of stuff. I use it. I have a couple of solo pieces I do live, and I kind of kick this in. But it kind of enhances those kind of chords.
Is there any recorded stuff other than YouTube of you just playing, no band?
There's always one or two ballads like that on my records.
Because I could listen to that all day. All day.
This one I was really helped. Jimmy Johnson's kind of a friend of mine through the years. Yeah, I've always liked that kind of like heartland, almost like country music, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real simple, but it's nice. Also, it sounds like Spinal Tap. It's very simple. It's all D minor. It's quite
D minor, yeah. That is so good. Now, and you got a little bit of delay coming from the effects loop.
Yeah, so I do that thing called the wet-dry thing, where you take the speaker out of the amplifier and you tap into its box, and it continues onto the speaker, but you have a tap off of that you send to whatever effects you want to use. At home with my big pedalboard, it goes back out to my board to like a DD500, the Boss delay, and a Digitech.
Now you don't have to...
And then I run both of those left and right into two channels of another amplifier, and those are completely wet.
And I'm just trying to think now, so you don't have to tap off the speaker like that. I don't know if you guys will even...
I guess you could take a line out.
Yeah, or just do it from the board so that you're feeding into...
If you do it from the board, then you wouldn't have it going through the amp first. You want the amp sound generating
Right, so you want the same preamp tone kind of on each.
Going to the effects.
Right.
Yeah. This seems to be the way everybody's doing. You can buy. I think John Suhr makes a little pedal as well, and the one I have is LA Sound Design. It's a guy named Dave Phillips.
So if you're not sure, so what Alan's got here is he's got his distortion pedals and chorus pedal and volume pedal.
This one a guy in Italy gave me, which I'm not quite sold on, but I think it's really nice. It's just a.
We'll give this guy a free plug. Who's it?
He's a sweet guy, and the pedal sounds really great. I just haven't had a chance to use it yet, and it's called Chirality Audio. Sounds great to me. The AC that I'm used to. And then the regular Vine pedal, then the clean boost, the RC, and then my delay. And really, besides that, when I'm playing live, I mean, I use wah-wah a couple times a set, usually on something. I've become a good wah-wah player through the years. And I have a nice, a really great Octavia. It's kind of a little boost. It's not really a fuzz. It's called Shinei, SHIN-EI. And they're from Japan, and they're quite pricey, but I got a good deal on one. And it's great for like once a night when you want to use that Octavia sound, you know. And I have a nice tremolo. I have an Electro Harmonics stereo tremolo pedal. That's is it called the Pulsar or something like that? I can't remember what it's called. But it's like a stereo in and stereo out. Because at one point I was doing my whole pedalboard was stereo, so it's nice to have that option if you want to do the satellite Fender Rhodes.
It's cool. But so this goes into the front of the Hot Rod Deluxe, and then you disconnect the speaker output of the Hot Rod Deluxe and plug that into this tap box. I guess it's some sort of
and you have a control over that, like how much you send
thing
to the effects, and that goes straight to the effects, which are 100% wet.
So then that goes into your delay pedal and any other effects, and then it's plugged into the
whatever you want to plug it into.
Whatever you want to plug into. So in this instance, we've got it going through the V40.
Yeah, it's sensitive because you can't really, you have to have it pretty clean, and you can't have it too boomy or too trebly because it kind of freaks out all the reverb. But you just dial it in. But
it does sound
a lot
great.
of guys are doing that. Well, you get the unimpeded, clean sound of the amp. Like if I just go here and turn off the thing, it's.
So I turn this one off, and then you can just hear it.
Or I'll do it here.
Oh, okay.
I can just turn off here, so then I just get nothing, which is happening all the time.
Yeah.
And then I can just roll back in much effects. So it even gives you a little bit of the stereo imaging because one amp is completely clean and the other amp has all this stuff in it.
So this is completely wet. This in isolation, this would sound.
And it's easier for the mixer guys too. Because if you're in a gymnasium and they don't want all that reverb going on, they can all just dial it down. So it's kind of cool that way too. But the mixers love it because they can get a really great sound out of it.
You do have a sound that is distinctly you. I mean, that's the difference I think between this one. The AC comp sounds like you, and this one sounds a little bit different to what I'm used to hearing you.
I'm not really used to. I just got it a few days ago, so I'm just dialing it in. But the guys are real sweet in Italy. Oh
man. Well, so. I think this has been an absolutely brilliant afternoon of talking guitar and tone, and hopefully everyone that's watched this has kind of enjoyed hearing something, picked something up. But if guys want to find out a bit more from you, your back catalogue of
my phone number is
your back catalogue of albums is pretty accessible, isn't it?
Yeah,
just iTunes or
Spotify
or wherever you want.
It's all over the place. I have an AllenHinds.com.
Yes.
HINDS.
And on the tuition side of things, though, if people want to take it to the next level and actually learn from you, where can they go?
I do Skype lessons. Skype lessons are a little bit limited in that you can't really play together. But usually, I've been teaching for so many years at MI, I can usually hear a student play in a few minutes and kind of know what the problem is. It's usually they don't know the scales well enough, or they're we can get into more analytical stuff too, as far as like scale knowledge and stuff goes, which is kind of fun.
Give up.
Maybe another day. But it usually comes down to time and tone and like once like we were talking about before, getting back in tune with the instrument, because a lot of guys are trying to do acrobatics and stuff on guitar that I think is kind of unnecessary, and I think you can make so much more music if you just know how to tweak the real easy stuff out of the guitar. I mean, I can tell somebody this is. I like to tell this because it's really true. I mean, if I learned an Allen Holdsworth lick and I was in the middle of playing and my mother was in the audience and I started going, you know, she'd probably go, "Where did we go wrong, honey?" You know, But as soon as I go, she'd go, "Woo, that's my boy." You know, so like everything kind of comes back to the basic stuff that I think guitar does so well. That's my take on it anyway. Maybe it's my old age. Maybe I'm just taking the path of least resistance, or maybe I'm just Homer Simpson. But I think that the guitar can be so expressive with so little, as long as you know how, as long as you have an imagination. And that's another thing, maybe for another day, we talk about little practice techniques on how to get the most out of your practice time and get the most out of like the minimal amount of knowledge.
But
you know?
if people, would you say TrueFire is your best kind of online tuition stuff? Or
Yeah, there's another one called Guitar Breakdown. This guy named Dave Clayton has one. It might be a little harder to find because TrueFire is everywhere. And I'm supposed to go do another thing with TrueFire sometime soon, but TrueFire has a good one. Or Skype lessons, or just write me, and people write me every few days and ask me questions about stuff, so I'm pretty accessible.
Well, I must admit, we'll put lots of different ways you can contact Alan or find out more about Alan in the description below this video. What can I say other than thank you so much? I am so looking forward to tonight. Alan's doing a masterclass with us tonight. I am so excited to see this clinic tonight. I've never seen you play live before. I think it's going to be amazing. If you're coming, we shall see you there.
I have a great background band. It's right over there on my iPad.
Is it called The Eye and the Phones?
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Little Eye and the Phones. It's an awesome backing band. So hopefully we'll see you guys there. If not, please do try and engage with Alan somehow. Check out his music or his tuition stuff. It's just phenomenal.
Thank you so much. It's been lots of fun.
Cool. Thank you very much for coming
now
over.
Let's go get a drink.
Okay.
A beer, fish and chips.
See you guys. Thanks for watching. See you next time.